14 men and 14 women are dropped onto a deserted island, each allowed only a few specific pieces of equipment. They must survive there for 40 days, facing constantly changing harsh environments, finding food, and building shelters. Comparatively, the women's arrival might spark interesting interactions against the slightly stronger men. Let's wait and see. Boarding a small yacht piloted by Bear himself, 14 young men of various ages head towards the island. The contestants are ordinary people from various professions with little to no survival experience. Upon arrival, they dive into the water without hesitation, their adrenaline surging with excitement. Some, having watched a few survival shows, even save their urine in case they can't find water. Once everyone is safely ashore, Bear speeds away without looking back, leaving them to film everything themselves. With night approaching in a few hours, they must quickly find a place to stay overnight. They introduce themselves on a flat area. Among them are 2 doctors and 2 construction workers, beneficial for team survival. Meanwhile, 14 young women are also heading to the island. Bear, suppressing a smile, gently reminds these ladies, who have hardly watched such shows, let alone survive on an island for 40 days. Upon arrival, they are very cautious, repeatedly confirming the water depth with Bear, and some are even scared to tears. After comforting them, Bear watches as they jump into the water with their limited gear and head to shore. Without a clear route, they start making friends, chatting non-stop, much to the distant Bear's amusement. To avoid trouble, Bear quickly leaves. Now, the 14 women must survive on this island. The island has plenty of fresh water and food, but they must find it themselves. Half an hour after reaching the shore, someone suggests they need to start moving. They head deeper into the jungle, but face disagreements on the route, each disregarding the other's feelings. When someone encounters a snake, a piercing scream scares everyone. Jaime cries from the fright, but with her teammates' encouragement, they continue. Soon, they find a large wild cassava root, rich in carbohydrates, and decide to take it with them. As they continue, the path becomes crowded. Without finding an open beach, they reluctantly settle for the night in the jungle. After clearing the undergrowth, and before they can set up shelters, it starts raining heavily, soaking their clothes. Desperate, they pull out a waterproof cloth and huddle under it to stay dry. Back with the men, they too encounter a snake. Paul wants to kill it with a knife, but since the camp isn't set up yet, he decides against it. With less than an hour until dark and only 400 meters advanced, to avoid spending the night with jungle insects, Paul urges everyone to pick up the pace. Someone leads with a machete to clear the path. After 2.5 hours of continuous walking, they finally see a light ahead. Emerging onto the much-anticipated beach, the relief is overwhelming. Paul can't help but cry, and the others, feeling reborn, jump into the sea to enjoy the cleansing waters, a stark contrast to the jungle.
That's a whale. It's a whale. Wow.
As night falls, without a camp, they can only sleep on the ground. In such conditions, a good night's sleep is out of the question. Somehow, they manage to make it to the next morning. After a whole day of trekking yesterday, their emergency drinking water is almost depleted. Fortunately, it's the storm season on the island, and fresh water sources are found in nearly every area. However, this water cannot be consumed directly and must be boiled. The group gathers on the beach to discuss their plan. Dan suggests that their first task is to start a fire to maintain their water supply. Besides that, they need to find edible food. After assigning tasks, they get to work. Engineers Dan and builder Andy are responsible for starting the fire using traditional friction methods. Unfortunately, due to the poor quality of the rope they found, they fail to start the fire. Meanwhile, others at the shore have collected many snails, which will likely be their dinner. After 2.5 hours of effort, they enjoy their dinner in the afternoon, eating raw sashimi due to the lack of a fire. Additionally, due to dehydration, some people's urine has turned dark yellow, a sure sign of trouble. Despite their best efforts, they can't get the tinder to ignite. Then a teammate comes up with an idea to use a magnifying glass to focus the sun's rays. This ingenious method works, and the tinder finally smokes. Andy carefully blows air into it until a small flame sparks, a hard-earned success. With the fire, survival becomes a bit easier. Thanks to this innovative approach, they quickly boil fresh water and eagerly fill their stomachs. Meanwhile, in the women's camp, continuous heavy rain lasts until midnight. Due to the cold temperature, they have to start a fire earlier than planned. With no other useful tools at hand, they resort to using a bow drill to create fire, a process that takes 3 hours. Everyone takes turns, and after 4 hours, they successfully start a small fire, exciting the team. The first thing they do with the fire is not to hydrate but to dry their wet clothes. By the next morning, as Julie says, they hardly slept at all, and many crabs crawled on them. It was their first night outdoors, and thanks to the cassava they found during the day, they roast it for breakfast in the morning. Although it's not as tasty as their usual meals, it's enough to fill their stomachs. As the saying goes, one man's joy is another man's sorrow. Due to the rampant mosquitoes in the jungle, many are bitten, causing 25-year-old Jade to consider quitting, thinking that young people lack resilience. Fortunately, her teammates are supportive and actively persuade her not to give up so quickly. However, their emergency water supply is now depleted, and they must discuss how to obtain fresh water. Kate suggests they find the beach first, as staying in one place makes it easy to get bitten. After half an hour of discussion, they select a few to search for the beach, with Kate leading. Considering there is a mangrove ahead, she concludes that continuing in that direction would be futile. Moreover, they did not bring water, which could easily lead to danger. For safety, they decide to return the same way. Suddenly, one of their teammates, Fran, collapses due to poor health. The others rush to the camp to help her, putting the mission to find the beach on hold. As time passed, the men's team encountered a severe storm. Although they had a fire, they lacked a shelter, and the storm arrived as expected. They hurriedly protected the fire, determined not to let the rain extinguish it. Night fell, and the heavy rain continued. Everyone began to build shelters, facing unfortunate weather right from the start. However, during the busy work, Andy often disappeared alone, which Paul had noticed earlier, posing a disadvantage for the team. They endured the rain until the next day, with barely anyone sleeping, but they managed to keep the fire alive. The unexpected severe weather led some, including Joe, the youngest at 22, to consider quitting. After a challenging night, Joe missed his family. Noticing Joe's mood, a teammate immediately hugged him to stabilize his emotions. Due to 2 days of continuous rain, the women had not yet left the jungle, leading to frequent mosquito bites. The stronger women might cope, but the younger ones struggled. Early in the morning, the beautiful Jade gathered everyone, unable to tolerate the jungle environment any longer, and proposed quitting. Her teammates tried to persuade her, but Jade was determined, with no major physical issues. She simply wanted to go home. Reluctantly, her teammates called to withdraw her from the competition. Soon, a yacht sped from the sea to pick her up. Following her departure, the remaining contestants discussed their next steps. With the local water sources depleted and the jungle unsuitable for living, their immediate task was to find the beach. Fee, a 58-year-old forestry worker, decided to lead 7 teammates on this mission, while the rest stayed to guard the campfire. Fi planned to head right, through the dense jungle to the other side of the island. They rushed and only took 2 cups of water, not enough to last long in the heat. Fi, experienced and older, led the way. After 2.5 hours, they reached the bright, open, and beautiful beach they had longed for, perfect for setting up camp. They immediately enjoyed the moment, stripping down and swimming, the fatigue seeming to vanish. They also found many coconuts, quenching their thirst after the long trek. Although the coconuts were refreshing, their quantity was limited. As the sun set, they had not found a new water source. Returning was impossible, so they slept on the beach. At 3 a.m., it started raining heavily. They huddled under palm leaves, shivering until morning. Back at the camp, the situation was frustrating as the hard-earned fire was extinguished by the rain. Experience was not the issue. 4 or 5 women couldn't even preserve the fire. However, they didn't realize the severity of the situation, instead feeling fortunate for the rainwater they could drink. Meanwhile, a few by the shore searched for a new water source. Following the direction of a stream on the beach, they walked into the jungle and found a small pond of fresh water, which excited everyone. This meant they could permanently settle on the beach. Having identified a water source and a place to stay, several people needed to return to the old location to bring the others. This meant re-entering the jungle, where getting lost was easy without landmarks. To prevent this, Phi made marks along their path. At a crossroads, disagreement arose. Phi insisted on moving forward, but her teammates thought they should head east. Since Phi had led them initially, they temporarily followed her, but it turned out to be the wrong decision, leading them further away from the camp. Unaware, they continued calling out for their teammates as they walked, but after 2.5 hours, Kate realized Phi was wrong, and they should be going in the opposite direction. This led to an argument between them. With no return after 24 hours, those at the camp grew very worried. Lacking fresh water and fire, they hadn't eaten in over 4 days. Fran, unable to cope, nearly broke down. Julie thought Fran was being dramatic, which led to an argument when Fran couldn't help but cry. Julie didn't expect such agility from young people. Meanwhile, the exploration team found a stream but were shocked to discover a crocodile lying in it. They had never been so close to a crocodile, let alone fight one with knives, so they had to leave the protein source untouched and bypass the river. Half an hour later, dehydrated, they returned to the shore, where they luckily found some coconuts to rehydrate before moving on. Back at camp, the remaining people were restless, afraid to leave in case their teammates returned and couldn't find them. Lying around wasn't solving their water and food issues, so Abby decided to build a tent for shelter from potential rain. However, lacking experience, their makeshift structure quickly collapsed, demoralizing everyone. The others continued their difficult journey, increasingly disoriented by the jungle, and eventually circling back to their starting point. Despite consulting the map, they still couldn't find the right path. Knowing they couldn't just lie around, the camp decided to try starting a fire. But the attempt at the bow drill failed immediately. For the elderly, Julie, things seemed manageable. She even washed teammates' underwear in the morning. However, considering she did more work, she felt it was unfair, leading to more arguments. As a storm approached, people on the shore began collecting plastic bottles, a potential source of precious water. Another night passed, and they picked coconuts for breakfast again. The long-awaited rain finally came at noon, and they hurriedly used their bottles to collect water. Having not eaten for 4 days, this water was their only hope for survival. After rehydrating and packing several large bottles of water, they continued their search for the camp. Along the way, they argued frequently about directions. Ultimately, they agreed to let Kate lead the way back. Meanwhile, at the other camp, a crisis occurred due to severe dehydration. Young Fran collapsed and her teammates quickly called for rescue. A yacht soon arrived at the shore. After a preliminary checkup, Fran was temporarily taken aboard the yacht, with the possibility of returning to the competition if she recovered. The remaining 4 teammates waited anxiously on the shore. Fortunately, Fran safely returned to camp. Realizing the dangers of staying further, the group discussed going to find the others, hoping to gather resources along the way. They quickly packed and set off, planning to move north along the coast. Under Kate's leadership, the other group unexpectedly returned to their starting point, a precise navigation feat. This led to frustration among the team members, who felt stranded after 3 days of walking with no progress. Just as they were breaking down, their teammates found them. A sharp shout rejuvenated everyone, and they ran to embrace each other, relieved to reunite after 3 days. Now, they could finally rest. The men's camp faced continuous heavy rain for 2 days and nights, nearly destroying their camp and sinking spirits. Today's task was to urgently find a suitable campsite. Hopes were pinned on architects Andy and Paul, but their ideas differed significantly. Andy wanted to build the shelter on the beach for better hunting and views, while Paul felt that living on the beach was akin to suicide, as storms and waves could destroy tents. After considering both opinions, the rest felt safer in the jungle. Led by Paul, they began gathering materials to build shelters. The initial process went smoothly, but soon young Joe lost his motivation, weakened by 2 days without food. After a mild rebuke from a teammate, Joe angrily walked to the beach to call to quit the competition. However, rain forced everyone to stop and focus on preserving their fire source. Once the weather cleared, Joe made the call to withdraw, reflecting a lack of resilience among the young. The rest resumed building shelters, but Paul and Andy disagreed fiercely on the plans. As builders, both were convinced of their correctness, leading to unnecessary arguments and a deadlock. The shelter project stalled, and Paul, unable to tolerate the disagreement, also decided to quit. During a team meeting, aside from Joe waiting for a boat, Paul announced his intention to withdraw due to unresolved conflicts with Andy. The argument escalated, and Andy also decided to quit. Despite attempts to mediate, the outcome couldn't be changed. Paul and Joe were the first to leave the competition, quickly returning home by yacht. Now, only 12 contestants remain on the men's team. Encouraged by his teammates, Andy decided to stay. By the fourth day, they had barely eaten anything and needed to find food. Fish were often seen swimming near the shore, but without spears, catching them was difficult.
Get it. Okay, go! Get him! Oh, Andy, get him! Get him behind it. Oh, cut him off. Get him!
Meanwhile, another team spotted a large iguana. They attempted to knock it down with a stick, but due to poor aim, they failed. The group by the shore also spent half a day trying to catch something, but ended up burning thousands of calories for nothing. As night fell, strong winds picked up, followed by heavy rain. With no food, they also had to protect the fire from going out. Sleep was impossible. On the fifth day, Andy complained about the weather after a sleepless night, which was tough for a man over 50. This led him to consider quitting, but his teammates quickly comforted him, knowing they couldn't afford another dropout. They offered to build him a single bed so he could sleep better, and Andy decided to wait a few more days before making a decision. On the other side, Vic was leading a team to hunt crocodiles, hoping for a big meal if they found one. However, after searching the island, they found only lively scorpions and disease-ridden black bats with no edible protein. The group then tried their luck fishing at the shore. Kie claimed to have seen a crocodile on the beach, so they split into two groups to ambush it. After waiting 2.5 hours, the crocodile never appeared, and they returned to camp frustrated. Others tried fishing from the rocks. They almost caught a fish, but it escaped during the struggle, turning their only gain into nothing. Back at camp, Andy and his teammates had constructed a single bed, though it seemed likely to fall apart at night. Meanwhile, Charlie suddenly yelled out after his foot was stung by something. For safety, Sam called for help, but the culprit was just another scorpion. The injury wasn't severe, so the rescue team didn't bother, but Charlie was immobilized for the next few days, needing help even to walk. With less than an hour until dark and needing food for the evening, young Barney and Ross decided to go fishing on the rocky shore. The waves were rough, crashing every few seconds. They hoped to catch a big fish in these conditions, but a wave swept Ross into the sea, losing the camera in the process. Another wave knocked Barney over, ruining another expensive camera. Disheartened, they returned to camp without any catch, and with 2 lost cameras. Before going to sleep, they shared their ordeal with everyone. Fortunately, no one blamed them, but this made Andy reconsider his participation. Concerned about his own safety, he called to withdraw the next morning. Andy's decision angered his teammates, who even suspected that Paul's earlier departure was just an excuse. However, they couldn't stop someone who wanted to leave. With architect Andy's departure, only 11 contestants remain on the men's team. Their strength appears quite weak, having not caught any protein for 5 consecutive days. Out of desperation, someone decided to catch a scorpion and roast it over a fire. Dan didn't hesitate to eat it, though it tasted a bit strange. Those who couldn't stomach it continued to go hungry. Later, Sam and Barney planned to go to the shore to gather seafood, hoping to pick up some snails for dinner. Instead, they found a lizard hiding in a crevice, trembling. Catching it would mean a decent meal, so they divided the tasks and started prodding it with sticks. Sam, quick and agile, successfully captured it. Surprisingly, their work turned into a feast. They brought it back to camp, showing it off to their incredulous teammates, then roasted it over the fire. Having starved for so long, finally having meat to eat made everyone deeply appreciative. Although each person only got about a bite, it signified significant progress. The women's team had been surviving on the island for a week, consuming hardly any nutritious food. Since the two teams had only just merged on this new beach, they hadn't found a water source yet. Women typically need about 2 to 4 liters of fresh water daily, and without enough water, they could experience severe dehydration and dizziness. However, they were all too lethargic to act, even close to dying of thirst. Unable to stand it any longer, Georgie led a group to search for water. They plunged into the jungle but found no water source, only 2 small wild pigs under a tree. Knowing that fierce mother pigs might be nearby, They decided not to risk catching them for lunch and returned empty-handed to camp. Later that afternoon, Georgie decided to try her luck again, knowing she couldn't rely on her teammates. Walking about 2 kilometers along the coast, they luckily found droplets of water on rocks, confirmed to be fresh water, and quickly drank their fill before even thinking of filtering it. They returned to camp and shared the news. But since there was no fire yet, everyone hesitated, fearing the risk of diarrhea from unboiled water. They decided to start a fire first, using the old method of friction with a bow drill. Half an hour later, they successfully produced smoke, and the fire starting went smoothly. They placed the cans full of fresh water on the fire to boil. Just as they thought their troubles were over, a terrible scream was heard. Rushing over, they found that a water can had exploded, scalding a teammate's arm. She cooled her burn in the water for several minutes. The injury wasn't severe, and they treated it with spray from the first aid kit. She could continue as long as it wasn't too serious. Once the water boiled, they could finally hydrate properly. Thinking they were lucky to find a water source, they were surprised when the 2 pigs they had seen earlier showed up at camp, running around as if not afraid of humans. After a week of hunger, the idea of having these pigs for lunch was tempting. However, you could predict the outcome. The women found the piglets too cute to harm. Jaime, a vegetarian at home, thought killing the pigs was a terrible sin. Resistant to taking life, they decided to keep the pigs as pets and even named them. This decision was quite astonishing. Soon, the island faced stormy weather. A sudden heavy rain gave them a chance to catch their breath. As long as they could keep the fire going, even the piglets ran to the fire. Nevertheless, the women did not consider eating them. Soon, a waterspout appeared in the sky, posing a potential threat to the team's safety. After the rain cleared, they stored the collected rainwater. Considering their recent trials, they found the area unsuitable for living due to scarce water resources and unpredictable weather. Someone suggested moving to the previous beach where water was more abundant. After a discussion, they agreed and planned to move the next morning. For dinner, instead of eating the plump wild pigs, they surprisingly chose to eat pungent snails. It seems like a joke to expect women to survive in these conditions. By the 9th day, everyone started packing. They initially planned to take the wild pigs with them, but the animals were uncooperative. Despite their efforts, the pigs remained indifferent, so they decided to leave them behind. The journey to the new location involved a 2.5-hour walk through dense jungle, during which it started raining again, allowing them to collect more water. Upon reaching the beach, the 2 piglets that had followed them proved too tempting to ignore. Even though they successfully reached the new site, Fran from the team faced health issues due to the cold environment, leading to a drop in her body temperature. Concerned for her safety, Fran decided to withdraw from the competition, and soon a yacht arrived for her. As expected, her weak condition meant it was best for her to go home and rest. With Fran's departure, 12 contestants remained in the women's team. As the beach was littered with marine debris, they started collecting anything usable. They even found a half bottle of a beverage, which Jaime eagerly drank, savoring the sweet taste they hadn't experienced in days. Over time, they found a water source, but their attempts to boil water were thwarted by damp firewood, which extinguished the flames after just a few minutes. After struggling from noon until the afternoon without success in making fire, Bear had to intervene for safety reasons by sending a new fire-making kit. After more effort, they finally managed to create a small fire just before dying of thirst. Dinner was only some gathered nuts, but the temptation of the piglets led some to propose roasting them, as they had gone 10 days without protein. After a meeting, the majority decided to eat the pork, while Jamie chose not to participate and walked to the beach alone. Lauren and others then prepared the pork, which had been eagerly awaited. They brought the meat back to camp for a barbecue. The aroma of roasting pork filled the camp, and even those who initially refused joined in eagerly, proving that this was the kind of food normal people should eat. With the added protein, the women's team's chances of survival improved. Currently, the male team has survived on the island for half a month. During days without food, they mostly endured hunger. Those contestants with more body fat fared better, while the originally thin ones now had protruding ribs. Since arriving, Charlie had lost over 10 pounds in weight. This was visibly evident from his appearance. During the daily morning meeting, someone proposed that the most accessible food source remained fish. This necessitated greater focus in this area. At noon, the group specifically went to the shore to fish. More participants meant higher chances of catching fish. Unfortunately, though fish kept biting the hooks, overall, they still caught practically nothing. The group returned to camp to rest for a few hours. For others, the day might have ended here, but Vic turned his attention to alligators. If they could capture one, he'd earn newfound respect, and the entire camp's food worries would vanish. Vic led several teammates to search near the lake. Judging by the scattered mud patches on the ground, wild alligators undoubtedly frequented this area. Soon they discovered a burrow, but unfortunately, no alligator resided inside. They cautiously approached the water's edge, where Vic spotted an alligator mid-lake from afar. This elusive creature posed extreme danger, but clearly, it remained active here. The two decided to build a snare trap on shore. Perhaps they could capture it when it emerged. Using sticks and ropes, they swiftly crafted a trigger mechanism. For safety, Vic tested it with branches. The mechanism appeared functional. Now they awaited results. Meanwhile, while others worked diligently at camp, Kaya lounged lazily on the beach. He contributed virtually nothing to the team, idling and resting spot daily. Such behavior inevitably sparked resentment. Even Vic openly expressed disgust. When Key returned to camp, teammates confronted him about his issues. Yet he seemed impervious to reason. Words had no effect. Another day passed. Persistent hunger left everyone weakened. Though Vic and Dan set additional traps, nothing had been captured so far. Despite enduring 3 days and 9 missed meals, essential tasks like gathering firewood couldn't be neglected. Anyone with residual strength scavenged driftwood ashore, except Kai, who remained idle on the beach. He'd stayed there since morning. Witnessing this, camp members reached their limit. Vic finally confronted him directly, but Kai stubbornly persisted in his ways. At this rate, the team risked fracturing. During an afternoon exploration, others luckily discovered a fishing net ashore. This tool meant they could fish offshore and potentially secure new resources. Several teammates began modifying the net. After adjustments, they waded into the sea. Results would take days to manifest. Following a brief 2.5-hour rest, they returned to shore as fishing enthusiasts that afternoon. Only 2 of the original 8 hooks remained, making the task even harder. The net yielded similarly dismal results. Nothing upon retrieval. Today's total harvest amounted to 0. Tonight, they'd lie hungry in camp. Another day passed in the blink of an eye. Vic led several teammates to inspect the traps. Footprints along the shore clearly indicated an alligator had triggered the mechanism. They assumed it had escaped after breaking free, but sharp-eyed Barney soon noticed something odd. Zooming in, they spotted the alligator submerged underwater. This discovery shocked everyone. The creature appeared restrained by ropes, prompting the trio to devise a plan immediately. Barney sprinted back to camp for reinforcements. Upon hearing they'd captured an alligator, the group prepped gear and mobilized at once. Their strategy involved binding the alligator's jaws with ropes to neutralize its attacks. During the struggle, its massive size became apparent. After successfully looping the first snare around its mouth, they forcibly dragged it ashore. The 3 then piled atop it like a human avalanche. Their combined 330-plus pounds nearly crushed the reptile to pulp. A swift knife strike finalized its demise. Man, they'd finally bagged a real heavyweight. After hog-tying the alligator, they lashed it to a pole and hauled it to camp. Its size rivaled an adult human. This feast would sustain them for days. As night fell, they butchered the carcass into sections, grilling sliced meat over flames. One bite the flavor was transcendent. Imagine enduring half a month without proper food, then suddenly savoring roasted meat pure bliss. They devoured it ravenously, bite after bite. Thus, they slept in satiated contentment. The next morning, they finished leftovers for breakfast. Now energized, even labor felt invigorating. Smiles lit every face. By evening, the island's sweltering heat threatened to spoil the remaining alligator meat. They boiled the last portions in a pot. Shockingly, a plump alligator lasted merely 2 days. This meant urgent new food hunts loomed. Time leaped to day 20. At dawn, Barney spotted a crimson snake. He cleaved it in 2 with 1 stroke. Though killing unsettled him, hunger left no choice. While gutting it at camp, they discovered a partially digested bird inside, clearly inedible. The snake was swiftly consumed. Meanwhile, Vic delivered shoreline news. After half a month, he'd landed their first fish, the team's sole provider. They simmered it with leftover alligator bones into broth, but rotten clams within tainted the stew with putrid stench. Gagging, they forced it down. Vic declared this life unbearable. While others lounged at camp, he grabbed his rod and returned to fish. To Vic, his teammates seemed incompetent. In crises, only I deliver. After over 4 hours of fishing, he triumphantly hauled back a dozen plump sea fish. In skill, I bow to none. Yet teammates showed no gratitude, not even offering a coconut. That night, they feasted on Vic's haul. Finally, Vic snapped and voiced grievances. I've shouldered fishing alone for days. Most food here is my hard-won catch. Meanwhile, freeloaders infest this camp. This injustice ends now. After deliberation, he resolved to pause fishing temporarily, testing whether others could survive without him. The group had no rebuttal. Today's meal owed entirely to Vic. Another day passed in the blink of an eye. With Vic intentionally on strike today, the others finally devised a plan to fish offshore. Lacking experience, they even consulted Vic before departing. Meanwhile, the remaining members aimed to build a raft. This would allow deep water fishing. They secured collected plastic bottles to the raft's base. With enough bottles, buoyancy was achievable. After laboring all day, they completed the raft by afternoon. Eager to test it, they launched it immediately. Surprisingly, it performed well, sturdy enough to carry 2 people fishing. Though navigating the raft was risky, the potential rewards justified it. As for Vic, now idle, he decided to craft a personal bed. Sleeping on the ground was unsustainable. Self-isolating from the group, Vic began longing for his family. Meanwhile, the 2 on the raft fished for 3 straight hours. Whether due to poor skill or luck, not a single bite occurred. Without Vic, starvation seemed inevitable. Returning empty-handed, Vic met them with disappointment. Tonight, hunger loomed again. Disheartened, Vic retreated to his bed early. Time leaped to day 25. Vic, now bedded, appeared refreshed, but others suffered relentless mosquito bites. Bodies riddled with swollen welts, some faces grotesquely disfigured. A team meeting resolved to have Vic lead bed-building efforts. Hunting tasks paused for the day. They gathered materials and worked diligently. Fortunately, yesterday's hermit crab catch, boiled in a pot, provided meager dinner. By afternoon, beds were completed for all. The comfort was unparalleled. Finally, respite from insects. After choking down foul crab soup, Vic, unable to bear the scene, ventured fishing with Kai. The same raft, different occupants. Results varied drastically. Soon, Vic hooked a sizable eel. This catch left teammates dumbfounded. As they prepared to return, a freak gust of wind swept the raft seaward. Panicked, Vic summoned 2 teammates for rescue. After struggling ashore, the raft disintegrated abruptly. Vic narrowly escaped being shredded by reefs. Regrouping on land, they found the raft destroyed. Thankfully, all survived, but the ordeal traumatized Vic deeply. That night, he skipped the debrief entirely. By next morning, having brushed with mortality, Vic seemed to regain perspective. Revitalized, he resumed fishing. Expertise matters. Fishing from afternoon till dusk, Vic returned with 4 or 5 large fish. Teammates erupted in exhilaration. Truly, without Vic, they were helpless. As fish sizzled over flames, teammates regarded Vic with newfound respect. Indeed, a team thrives only with a leader to carry it. Currently, the female team has survived on the island for half a month. Having consumed 2 piglets a few days prior, they've managed to catch their breath temporarily. Thus, they even began dyeing each other's hair. It has to be idle hands indeed. Wouldn't building beds be a better use of time? Today's lunch was particularly meager. Only roasted coconuts and mushrooms. Such dry fare proved indigestible for some. Team member Georgie developed symptoms: weakness, dizziness, and constipation. For safety, teammates examined her. If severe, she'd likely withdraw and return home. With no other food sources, they scavenged clams along the shore, their sole protein supply. But on the return trek to camp, a massive stingray swam near the coastline. Georgie sprinted back to fetch a machete, but their response proved too sluggish. By their return, the creature had vanished. As night fell, they slept directly on the ground. No bed-building intentions whatsoever. The next morning, to assess physical conditions, they conducted weigh-ins. For most, weight loss signaled trouble, but Shivala rejoiced, her figure now slimmer. Surviving on a desert island, yet women's priorities remained baffling. Shivala even vowed to shed more weight. A team meeting followed. Some reported severe dehydration. Food-seeking duties were delegated collectively. Failure meant withdrawal. Under urgency, teammates scavenged frantically. Recalling wild boars spotted earlier in the jungle, they set traps for luck. Using ropes and sticks, they rigged triggers. Boars stepping in would be hoisted. Now they awaited results. These women endure astonishingly. Half a month sleeping on hard ground. Zero bed-building initiative despite ample time. Such habits inevitably harmed health. Becky suffered a spinal injury from this. Sleepless nights followed. She confided in teammates. "My spine aches unbearably. I can't work like this." Though reluctant to quit, she voiced her decision. After farewells, Becky departed by boat. The female team now has 10 remaining members. Days earlier, Lauren discovered a fishing net ashore. Today, they tested it at sea. Most were first-time fishers. Handling nets underwater proved cumbersome. One genius suggested anchoring the net on shore. High tide tonight might trap fish. Man, even high tide won't reach that height. At nightfall, they inspected the net. Results matched expectations. Not a single fish scale. Tonight, hunger persisted. Time leaped to day 25. Lauren and Beth went to inspect the traps. Unfortunately, though triggers had been activated, no prey was captured. Even bait vanished completely. They resigned to another fruitless day, but the final trap delivered. A boar weighing dozens of pounds lay immobilized. The sight nearly drew laughter from both. Alone, subduing it was impossible. Lauren raced back to camp for reinforcements. News electrified the group. As novice hunters, they meticulously planned before departing. Split into 2 groups to flank it should work. An hour passed debating strategies. Returning, they found the boar still trapped. Approaching cautiously, they circled the animal endlessly. Not one dared strike. Seizing the delay, the boar snapped ropes and fled. Speechless, they served it on a platter still fumbled. Practically spoon-fed, yet the vanished feast forced them to scavenge clams for dinner. This routine persisted 2-3 days. Gradually, clams grew palatable. Another day dawned. Still no breakfast. Days prior, Shivala built a bird trap near camp. Today she checked it. Bait stolen, no birds caught. Unsurprising for her skills. Meanwhile, Lauren led others into the jungle to set additional traps, boosting odds. Entering the foliage, they spotted a snake mimicking a branch. Motionless, nearly invisible. Armed with machetes, they felt secure. After dislodging it from the tree, Lauren decapitated the serpent with one strike. The carcass became future roasted meat. En route to check another trap, fortune smiled again. The escaped boar lay snoozing nearby. No third chance sees this. After brief strategizing, they crept toward the boar. Georgie lunged first in the climax. Others piled atop to pin it down. 4 bodies pressed down, silencing the boar's squeals. To minimize suffering, Lauren plunged her blade into its skull. Taking life unsettled them, but secured days of protein. They triumphantly hauled the boar to camp. Others gaped in awe. However weakened, energy would revive now. Butchering consumed afternoon till night. Grilled tenderloin's aroma dazzled. They devoured it insatiably, faces radiant with fulfillment. Bonus: the snake meat, now roasted entirely to prevent spoilage. After a month, this feast crowned their grit. Pride swelled in every survivor. The male team has now survived on the island for a month. Scallops and coconut meat remain their easiest food sources. On lucky days, they might feast on grilled fish, but feeding 10 strapping lads is no simple task. Chronic malnutrition has left some contestants gaunt, reduced to skin and bones. Daily meetings revolve around sourcing food. Today's plan: track wild boars in the jungle. But sudden torrential rain derailed everything. Before they could react, the skies unleashed a deluge. Their stockpiled dry firewood soaked instantly. The camp nearly flooded entirely. While others scrambled to protect the fire, Sam stood idle on shore, admiring the sunset. This blatant laziness fueled resentment. The storm raged for a full day and night. Camp beds were swept away. Sam was tasked with weaving palm fronds for repairs, but after one glance, he declared it impossible. Teammates nearly cursed him out. They accused him of dodging hard labor, unfair to the rest. Collectively, they threatened to cut his food rations. Panicked, Sam called an emergency meeting, vowing to prove his worth. He then gathered fishing nets by the shore, targeting small fish. A laughable plan, given the camp's recent failures. Sam recruited a teammate to deploy the net, swimming deep offshore. After setting it up, they waited for results. Contrast breeds bitterness. Meanwhile, Fish King, Vic returned triumphantly with catches. The camp's undisputed MVP, he supplies half their meals. Sam seethed as Vic hogged glory, though objectively, Vic's skills outclasses Sam by miles. Without Vic, breakfast would vanish. After barely replenishing protein stores, the group chopped firewood at noon, then scavenged clams before high tide. Each received 15 or 16. Mere mouthfuls. Sam later checked his net alone, convinced of success. But after hours of swimming, the gill net remained pristine. Defeat crushed him. As fish grew scarcer daily, even Vic struck out today. Facing crisis, they agreed to mass deploy gill nets, their last hope for protein. Sam led the team into the sea, their excited shouts hinting at success. Hauling the net ashore revealed a staggering haul of 21 fish. Cheers erupted. Feast after days of hunger. Back at camp, they tallied the catch. 2 weeks' worth at 2 fish per person daily. Credit went to Sam for repairing the nets. Full bellies carried them through another day. With this promising start, their luck skyrocketed over the coming days. Gill nets yielded repeated hauls. So much fish piled up they couldn't finish it. But the island's scorching heat meant each net retrieval required 1 to 2 Daltons is weight, causing much fish to rot. Reluctantly, they discarded the spoiled meat. To curb waste, they resumed fishing during downtime. The journey required crossing treacherous reefs, with violent waves. One misstep meant being dragged underwater. Vic leaped across first, landing safely. Teammates followed, leaving only Will, burdened with the camera. He chose to edge along the reef instead of jumping. Mid-crossing, he slipped and fell. Man, that was a brutal tumble. The camera smashed. Will's arm gashed open by sharp rocks. Alarmed, the group aborted fishing, rushing Will back to camp. Teammate Piers inspected the wound. This needs stitches immediately. Will had to withdraw. Devastated, Will lamented. 1 week shy of completing the challenge. Still, teammates dialed the evacuation call. A speedboat soon arrived to ferry him to the hospital. With Will gone, the male team now has 10 members. 1 more week to endure for victory. To vacation mode, their final stretch. They sought lifestyle upgrades. Despite the raft's aid, gill nets yielded scant fish. Even shore clams were depleted. Days of hunger followed until someone found sun-dried baby sea turtles ashore. Alive, we'd never eat them. But nature's ruthless. Sam tossed the dried turtles into a pot. The broth tasted shockingly delicious. 10 times better than fish. Though some objected on ethical grounds, hunger overruled qualms. In the blink of an eye, it was already day 35. Even the coconuts at the entrance had been completely consumed. As time passed, surrounding resources also began to dwindle. At this point, someone suggested checking the other side of the island. Perhaps resources there would be more abundant. Thus, Sam and a teammate crawled into the jungle to trek. They needed to walk 2.5 hours to reach the southern shore. This was undoubtedly a dangerous mission. If anything went wrong midway, the consequences would be unimaginable. When they finally painstakingly arrived at the southern shore, what greeted them wasn't an endless beach, but a perilous, steep cliff. A single misstep could lead to a fatal fall. This meant the two had wasted an entire day's effort. They might as well return to camp empty-handed. By now, teammates grew anxious about their safety. It was already dark, yet they hadn't returned. Teammates specifically went searching for Sam and his companion. The deeper they ventured, the steeper the paths became. Unfortunately, there was still no sign of the two. This filled everyone with dread. After surviving together for so long, camaraderie had inevitably formed among them. 2.5 hours later, They returned to camp empty-handed, just as someone proposed calling for rescue. At 10 p.m., Sam and his teammate finally made it back safely. Man, their teammates had been worried sick. After surviving this nerve-wracking night, the next morning, everyone regained their drive. They seemed to grasp the meaning of teamwork, beginning to collectively enjoy the island's offerings. In this state, food supplies gradually returned to normal. While strolling on the beach that day, they discovered wild boar tracks. Turns out this island had plenty of animal resources. Following the tracks for a few hundred meters, they unexpectedly found a boar napping under tree shade. The creature lay motionless, cooling itself on the ground. Seeing the perfect opportunity, they cautiously began closing in. When within striking distance, Vic charged forward in a sudden dash, instantly seizing the boar's hind legs. Sam swiftly plunged a knife into its neck, every movement executed flawlessly without hesitation. The boar's tusks looked terrifying in retrospect. The group hauled the meat back to camp. Teammates couldn't stop grinning at the sight. This boar weighed at least 100 pounds. They grilled the sliced meat on metal plates. One bite, the flavor was absolutely divine. Though lacking any seasoning, hunger became their finest spice. Soon, they devoured every last morsel. Now, with ample food supplies, it was time for them to finally relax a bit. They even crafted a sign using a crocodile skull and boar hooves, symbolizing their gradual conquest of the island. At sunset, everyone played games on the beach, marking their first true moment of leisure since arriving. As night fell, they lit a bonfire, gathering around to share survival insights. Each had grown tremendously during this time. Now it was time to leave. In a blink, departure day arrived. Bear arrived by yacht to check on the survivors. He felt deeply gratified by their perseverance. So many had endured until the final moment. They extinguished the fire, boarded the yacht, and sped homeward.